So, the first film I'll be reviewing was the legendary Bohemian Rhapsody, directed by Bryan Singer, or supposedly directed because he disappeared off set a couple of months before it wrapped, and starring the great Rami Malek from Mr. Robot, who was tremendous in this film, absolutely tremendous. Now, I went into this film with fairly low expectations, firstly because I'm not actually the biggest Queen fan. I play drums in a rock and roll cover band, and we do a few Queen covers in there, but for me, they were more of a singles band, and I like a lot of their songs, but I'm not attached to them in the same way that others are. And secondly, I'd read a few initial critiques on the film who suggested that it was good and entertaining, but it glossed over several of the details about Freddie Mercury, namely the homosexuality, the drugs, the alcoholism, all of the sort of dark chapters of Freddie's life. And for that reason, I was expecting a sort of caricature, cartoonish version, similar to something like Blow, I suppose, with Johnny Depp, covering a long period of time, but glossing over a lot of the details. What I found was that this was bloody brilliant, actually. So, critics, no, you're wrong, actually, because this is what cinema's all about. It's about being entertained, and from the moment I sat down in this cinema, the opening shot where the camera comes from behind Freddie Mercury, follows him backstage, people tuning their guitars, playing with their amps, making sure their sounds are right, and he walks through, opens up the curtains, and suddenly we've got an audience of thousands of people. It was captivating from that one moment. And that actually, while I'm on that subject, I wanted to mention another shot from a director's perspective, which was just phenomenal, which is when we get to the Live Aid performance at the end of the film, we get one shot, which is from a helicopter, filming this immense crowd at Wembley Stadium, and it comes down into the crowd, all the way onto the stage, so that we're with Freddie, and then it turns around so we can see what he's seeing. And I was so engaged and so put in his place. Phenomenal. So that was my initial impression. I'd like to talk about Rami Malek's performance because I thought it was sensational, absolutely sensational. He embodied Freddie Mercury. His voice, his mannerisms, everything about the way he performed on stage. It was just like seeing Freddie Mercury re-emerge from the dead. And I was extremely impressed because I've only really seen him in Mr. Robot, and I did not expect to see him demonstrate such a range and such a, in such a difficult role. So that for me was phenomenal. Secondly, the casting of the band members. So Brian May, I thought it was Brian May. I actually can't remember who the actor was off the top of my head, but I thought it was him. It was great. Absolutely, he sounded identical to him. So very impressed with that. Roger Taylor less so, didn't really look like him and didn't have that sort of high voice, but nonetheless, thoroughly enjoyed the casting of the film. Even Mike Myers doing a little pastiche about his role in Wayne's World, where they sing Bohemian Rhapsody, and you mentioned he plays a record executive that says that it'll never be played on the radio, which is quite ironic considering it's Mike Myers. And I liked that. Now I just want to address some of the things that I've mentioned about the critics saying that it glossed over a lot of the details. I thought that the film was very in touch with what it wanted to be about. So it went into a huge amount of detail about his homosexuality and his struggle with his first love, Mary, and how he was desperate to not break her heart or hurt her feelings, and knew that he was sort of moving into this homosexual lifestyle and almost felt guilty about it. And I never knew that. I never understood that about Freddie, and I found that really interesting. We didn't see a lot of the orgies, a lot of the leather pants and dildos and cocaine on dwarves and things like this. Do we need to see all of that? I thought it was suggested to the extent that we understood what the film was trying to do without us having to be, I don't want to say grossed out, but without us having to actually see the full details of that sordid lifestyle that he led. And of course it was a PG-13 film rather than 18, and I think they were trying to appeal to a much wider audience, and I think it succeeded in doing so. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. So just a couple of other things I want to say about the film, namely the live performance at Live Aid, which just blew me away. The way it was filmed, I sort of spoke about it briefly before, but you really are on stage with that band and you see everything that's brilliant about Queen and everything that is brilliant about Freddie Mercury. So full marks to Bryan Singer if he was involved in that, because it was phenomenal. And the other thing I wanted to mention, which again goes against what all of the critics have said about this film, was that I developed a real emotional attachment to Freddie Mercury in this film. And to the extent that I actually shed a small tear towards the end of the film, because we uncover that, you know, he's had the HIV diagnosis, and he tells his band members, and it really touched me, to be honest. And that's not what's suggested from the other critics. So I think we were very engaged with Freddie's character throughout the film, and it succeeded in giving a well-rounded view and perspective of what Freddie was like, and some of the troubles and things that he had to address in his life. Now, just want to say a couple of minor things which I do agree with the critics about, which was that it did gloss over a few small minor details. So, for example, you know, his parents are given a very small role in this film, and we're never given a real reason why Freddie feels so isolated in this world that he lives in, and so desperate to escape the boundaries that his family have set. And I think we didn't see enough of his mum and dad, and him growing up and what he was like before he was this baggage holder in Heathrow. And, you know, another example of that was just with, you know, the bands. They were all getting on fantastically together, making great music, selling out shows, everything was going great. And then suddenly there's a party that Freddie Mercury is hosting. Roger Taylor's there, Brian May's there, and suddenly there's this animosity in the band, and they're all, Roger and Deaky and Brian, they're all slightly critical of Freddie's lifestyle and his partying and his hedonistic lifestyle, but there's no context as to when that sort of antagonism developed, so it sort of comes out of nowhere to an extent. But when you're making a biopic about Queen and you're covering a 15-year period, you're going to leave out certain bits. And I came out of the film, I watched it with my best mate, who's a huge Queen fan, by the way, and he loved it as well. So I think this works for both audiences, both people who love Queen, who perhaps like Queen, like me, and people who are just interested in seeing what Freddie Mercury was all about. So on the whole, I would give this film a 7.5 out of 10. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I would highly recommend people to go and see it. Similarly, I watched Star is Born quite recently. Very different thing, and that will be coming up tomorrow, but another musical film that really had a place in my heart. So tune in, please follow me, and we'll be covering Star is Born for tomorrow's review. Thank you.